Hello, everybody. So what's on my mind this week is this idea that learning is a generative activity. And there are a number of people who've written about this. For example, there's a fabulous guy called Arthur Shimomura who wrote this paper called Marge, a whole brain model for learning, where he talks about learning being generative. And there's also a fabulous book by Fiorella and Mayer where they talk about learning as a generative activity. And when I first came across this idea, I realized that, after 30 years of teaching, I'd never heard of it before. And I find it incredibly insightful when I'm doing training with people. So what is it? It's essentially this idea that when you're learning something, you kind of stop making an effort to learn if you already think that you know something. So if I was to think I know, if I look at a document and I recognize everything on there, it could be, let me say some actors' names and their faces, and they're all labeled underneath. I might say, yeah, I get that. That's their name. That's the face, that's true, and I recognize everything on there. So I go, yeah, I know those things because I can see them. But that's not generative. To really know if you know something, you have to take away all the sources and generate it from your long-term memory and actually think, do I know it? So a generative activity would be, okay, it might be a stimulus like the face of an actor, and I have to generate, do I know their name? And think, do I know it? And say that and say it out loud. Or it could be to organize the whole set of names and faces, to organize them so that they match. That would be a generative process because it would require me producing some knowledge. And this is one of the things I think has been missing from my training as a teacher, and I found it so useful, is thinking about everything you do in a classroom through the lens of generative learning. Is it generative? Are you making the students think using knowledge that they have rather than the stuff they can see around them? And it's as simple as things like I've seen teachers do quizzing in a class where they allow the kids to look up all the answers in their book. Like, do you know the answer to this? And they'll flick through the book to find the answer and they'll produce the answer and the teacher's already pleased with them. But it's not a generative process. Or it could be filling in a table of, say, something to do with history. And it's all the facts about a story in history. But all the facts and all the ideas are already there. They're just, they all have to do is go boom, boom, boom. And to be honest with you, even without really knowing anything about that subject, you could do the task. And I sit in the lesson doing the task with the kids because it can be done. So anything which can be done without really knowing anything isn't sufficiently generative. Another one would be, say, languages lessons. You've just learned some new phrases in Spanish. And I've seen lessons where the kids have got all their phrases in front of them in their books, and they are just practicing saying them. But it's not generative. They don't have to remember any of the phrases. They just can read them out. And whereas a more generative process would be say, okay, guys, this is a bit more difficult. Well, let's close the book and see what you can do. And that really forces you to think, well, can I say, last weekend I went to the cinema with my friends from memory. And it's harder initially, but actually, if that's the standard all the time, you get better at doing that and you learn in a deeper way. So that to me is such a powerful and simple idea that learning should be generative, that it's about producing stuff you already think you know and then evaluating whether it's correct and practicing doing that better and better without constantly scaffolding, constantly giving kids the crutch of having the resources to look at, making them feel, sort of deluding them into thinking they know stuff they don't actually know. And so that's the kind of the thing that's on my mind at the moment, because it's such a strong principle. And yet I find teachers, like I haven't even heard of the terminology and aren't even really thinking in that way. So there you go. That's my kind of top tip, if you like, for thinking about your practice. Is the learning generative in your lesson? Are you ensuring that it is? And once you start thinking about that, it does really make you a better teacher, I think.